Evening, everybody, and welcome to our first meeting of the fall, the October 8th, 2025 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Yet another wonderful fall day that we have had. The main order of business today is to review the three small grants that we have: the Coolidge Desk Restoration, the Mill River Flood Tree Memorial Project, and the Terrace Trails of Montview Conservation Improvements. Before we do that, we have just a few items to attend to. As we always do with our Community Preservation Committee meetings, we begin with general public comment. If anybody's out there Zooming in with us this evening that has a comment about anything having to do with the CPC, now is your time. Is there anyone out there wanting to speak about the CPC?
We see no hands.
No hands? Okay, we will move right along to the approval of the minutes. Sarah sent out minutes dating back to our last time we looked at small grants, which was in this last winter, January the 6th of 2025. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Julia, thank you. Is there a second? Martha, thank you. Any comments about those minutes? Anybody? No? Okay, with that in mind, there's a motion to approve the minutes of February the 6th, 2025. Sarah, you take us through a roll call on this, correct?
Absolutely. Roll call vote to approve those minutes. Lemmy?
Lemmy's not, oh, Lemmy's here. Oh, good.
Yeah, I was able to make it.
Yay.
Julia?
Yes.
Chris Hellman?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Chris Tate?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Chair's report. I have a few things that I wanted to bring up. One is that Kevin Lake, longtime chair of the Conservation Commission and representative from the CONSCOM to the CPC, has left us, and joining us will be Paul Foster Moore. He will be Kevin's replacement. He is, shame on him, in Italy rather than enjoying the fabulous fall weather here. But he will be joining us in our next meeting next week. Correct, Sarah? We think he's back for that meeting. So I asked Sarah to send a letter from all of us at the CPC thanking Kevin for his wonderful expertise and his service to the committee. And we will welcome Paul Foster Moore, who will join us next meeting. I had the privilege of speaking at a couple of events this summer. The first was the Habitat for Humanity dedication on the, I can't remember the street name, off of Route 66, the new Habitat project.
Street.
Say it
Laurel
again.
Street.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a really nice, wonderful event, and the family was just so appreciative, and there were a lot of people there, and it was always a pleasure to see the wonderful work that Habitat is doing in the community, and the wonderful turnout for their projects, and the amount of volunteers that it takes. It literally takes a village to get up a house, and that was really exciting. The other thing I did along with Julia was to speak at the pickleball dedication. My wife Maury and I drove in, and we were thinking, why are all these cars at the playground here? What is going on? Come to find out, there are more pickleballers out there than one could ever think possible, and it was quite an event. There was, what, Julie, at least, I want to say 200 people or something.
Yeah, that was the estimate. There were about 200, and it kept going all afternoon with more people.
Yes.
kind of cycling through. It was pretty great.
It was really great. And there was music and there was tents and there was pickleball demonstrations and there were pickleballers waiting to pickleball and it was really quite exciting. And I think you may recall those of us that have been on long enough when 2021, I believe it was, when we first appropriated feasibility study money for the courts, a number of us were like, pickle what? What is this thing? And so it's really cool. And I think people are loving those courts. Um, I had a chance also, as I'm sure a number of you have had, was to just do a little drive around and take a look um, at the new tennis courts and basketball court at JFK, which is just beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to go there, please do. It is really a welcome improvement from the sort of potholed, dilapidated courts that were there before. It's a safer experience. It's much more pleasurable experience for tennis ball players and basketball players. So that was really nice. I also went up 2 days ago up to Ryan Road. And while that's still the playground there is still a work in progress. If you haven't been up there, check it out. I went on, I can't remember whether it was Saturday or Sunday, and it was packed with kids and very appreciative parental figures who were standing watching their children play and very accessible. Remember, it's an all kids playground or all people's playground, whatever they call it, to get kids in wheelchairs and all coming in. And it was just delightful. There's still the police ribbon tape, so they're not done yet, but I think they're really quite close. Um, what else? We drove around the Bridge Road, the Prospect Meadow. What's the housing project called, Sarah? Prospect
Prospect Place condominiums.
Prospect Place, and that's really coming along. If you have a chance to look at that, there's landscaping being done. There are applications being accepted for that. I want to say 64, is that right? Units of affordable housing, Sarah?
Around that, I can pull it up.
60 something.
Yeah, it's a really substantial development.
Yeah, it's really coming along, which is wonderful. And Laurel Street is open and families are there and kids are in the playground. And again, if you haven't had a chance to do that, head over there. It's really quite spectacular. Um, what else? The DAR project for the historical preservation is in the works, and that is being done. Ruggles just signed their contract, so they have a ways to go. They have not begun work there. The Rocky Hill Greenway bike path extension is in progress. There's a lot of excavation work being done, putting in that bike path off of 66 there, which is nice. I think the Mainsfield project is underway. Sarah, is that correct?
Yeah, so the Recreation Department contracted with Fuss and O'Neill to do the modeling of the river and flooding situations and get some more detailed elevation information. That is just about complete, and then they will be working starting this fall, so coming up soon on a multi-day charrette to get input.
Great. So as always, it's such a pleasure and honor to drive around our city and see all of these projects and work. Thanks to community preservation funding, it's really wonderful. In these days of fiscal anxiety, it's just great that we're able to do projects that otherwise would perhaps not be funded, or most likely a number would not be funded without CPC funding. So that's a really exciting thing. I just wanted to go back one moment to the pickleball thing and give a shout out to Julia, who spoke publicly and wore, I think, 5 different shirts. Is that right, Julia? Representing CPC, the rec department, the lovers of pickleball, the who else?
I don't remember. I just kept pulling off shirts, but
She
it
just
was
kept,
funny.
yes,
It's like
pulling
wearing
off-
many hats.
many hats. In this case, it was many shirts. Anyway, it was a wonderful event. Sarah, am I missing any other works in progress that you want to talk about?
Those are the big recent ones. I'm just looking back. I
No,
was hoping
Brian,
to be able to share with you that the Boggy Meadow Trail received its state grant and would be able to return some funding back to the CPC. It did not, so unfortunately, those mass trails grants were just announced yesterday. And although the DPW happily received a federal grant under that program for $500,000 for bridge decking replacement, planning and sustainability did not receive that funding, so we'll have to use the entirety of the CPA funds, but we will be going out to bid on that in the next couple of weeks.
Do you want to talk briefly, Sarah, about the Connecticut River Greenway, that project?
It's so I don't have a lot to update on that. It's on hold for the moment, unfortunately. So the planning department is still optimistic that we can work with Mass DOT to come up with a solution to get people from Northampton to Hatfield along the Greenway. But at this point, it's not in the Mass DOT funding queue.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions for Sarah about any ongoing projects? Okay, good to see so much good work at work. Moving along to the financial report. Sarah, I'm wondering if you could screen share with us.
Yeah, certainly. They keep moving the screen share button. Where did it go? Here we go. So, I'll just give a quick overview and then we can discuss things in more detail if everybody has questions. So, estimated local revenue was just under 2 million for fiscal year 2026. Estimated state match, and this is always a bit of a guess, and I try to be as accurate as possible, but we have to do this so early in the process that we're often a little bit short. So I estimated state match is about $357,000. Add to that carryover, which was fiscal year 2025 state match that was above our estimate. So last year we estimated a number and included in this figure that we're now able to spend for this year is the amount that we couldn't spend last year because it was above that amount. Deducting $75,000 for the administrative account. Again, we never spend anywhere close to this amount of money, but this is the amount that has been set aside for, I think, since the CPA was established, and anything that isn't spent is returned and is reflected in this figure above. Debt service has gone up a bit, so these are, it should say FY26, sorry about that. So debt service is bonding payments for projects that were recommended for borrowing. That's just under $500,000, and that means that the CPA funds available for fiscal year 2026 number error is just under 2 million. And where do those funds live? So distributed equally among each of the set aside accounts at $254,675. And then 1.17 million in the budgeted reserve. And then adding up the projects that have come in for this fiscal year, it totals 1.6 million. This is maybe not quite accurate. I didn't quite know how to represent the Mineral Hill South acquisition. So this figure here is the amount that would be requested from the CPA were the state land grant that were applied for to be received. And that amount would go up to the full project amount of $633,500 if that grant does not come in. And I'm hopeful that we will know the answer to whether that grant has been received by the time we make the recommendations to City Council. But as a whole, state funding recommendations have been very much delayed as the federal funding picture and potential cuts play into budget numbers and things moving forward. So we're seeing grant announcements a lot later than we typically would.
Questions for Sarah? Sarah, I can't
So
see.
Sarah,
you.
sorry.
Yeah, go, Chris.
So Sarah, on the Mineral Hills one again, the additional funds, the 313, is that pretty much what the grant level is that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's
You're-
not, so there is a little bit of staff match and other city funds that are not reflected here.
Well,
And
basically what you're saying is we're looking at potentially another 300,000 request.
correct, yeah. So if the land grant were not to be received, the total amount of applications would be just over what is available for the entire fiscal year for this first round.
Other questions for Sarah? Sarah, could you go to, and I think it is this separate page, maybe it's bonding obligations, and just show us how that breakdown of the 495,000.
Yeah. So
And you had it in the
this,
simply it was the
actually,
transfer
let me do it in,
document.
yeah, let me do it in the transfers, hang on. a
Yeah, I
second.
think that was a little easier to,
So the transfer document that I sent out is what's done by the city council every year, which is necessary to do so early to be able to set the tax rate. And this basically just puts the expected CPA revenue for the year into all of the accounts that it needs to go into. So down, share. Alright, so the bonding payments for this fiscal year are just over, so principal and interest combined. We are still paying on the bean farm that is almost done. So just over 60,000 for that, 90,000 in principal and 5,400 in interest for Florence Fields. That one is also getting towards the end. 60,000 in principal and 3,600 in interest for Pulaski Park 2. So for those of you who we might remember funding this project, Pulaski Park was broken up into two phases. So there was the main segment of the park adjacent to Main Street, and then the DPW came back for a second request for what was called the Overlook Project, and that was the stairway and ramp and plantings down to the parking lot. And this number is higher because it is the first year repaying this 141,500 and 33,711 in interest for the Ryan Road Playground, and then 81,500 in principal and 18,842 in interest for the tennis and basketball courts. And these were both shorter bonds. So some of these bonds that people might not even remember funding were 8 or 10-year bonds. And these were only 5-year bonds. So we're not going to be paying those back for as long.
you said they were both 5-year bonds, correct?
Yes.
And when does the lead school playground kick in?
Lead school playground will kick in for fiscal year 27.
So that will be starting the summer of next year of 2026, correct?
Yeah. So the first payment would be due someplace after July 1st, 2026.
Great. Questions for Sarah? So to reiterate, if in fact we do not get the land grant for the conservation area request, and we were to fully fund all of these projects, I know this discussion doesn't happen for a few weeks, but just something to think about, we would have nothing left for the spring. We would spend everything that we had this fall for the spring. Bonding is always an option, and we're able to, in this case, we would be able to bond the bicycle track proposal, correct, Sarah? Is that the only one? Could we bond anything else?
The land acquisition would certainly be eligible for bonding. Um,
So both of those. We cannot bond for affordable housing project, is that correct?
Craft Avenue, I would have to look into that because it had been a city-owned property that may be possible. I don't believe so, but I could double check on that.
If you could double check on that, that would be great. Any other questions for Sarah about financial stuff? Good to go? All right, so again, tonight's main order of business is to review the three small grant applications that we have before us. One is for Calvin Coolidge's desk to be restored and then permanently, I believe, displayed at the Presidential Museum, the only presidential museum in a public library. Thank you, Lisa Downing. The Mill River Flood Tree Memorial, paying, I believe, for 20 trees at $150 a tree, commemorating 20 of the victims of the 1890, let me get this right, Gabby, 1894 flood. Correct? I'm sorry,
74, Brian.
74.
150 years last year.
150 years, yes, 1874 flood. And then looking at a pollinator garden and some tree signage at the Montview Conservation area. So we will go in that order. The Coolidge's desk is coming in at 3,000, the Mill River Flood Tree Memorial Project coming in 3,000, and the Terrace Trails and Montview Conservation Improvement Project coming in $1,965. So let's begin with Coolidge desk. And I think the way we've done this in the past is we make a motion, someone makes a motion, someone seconds it, and then we discuss it. Or maybe let's just, I guess, discussing it first. I know that Lisa is here representing the library. Lisa, anything you'd like to share with us? We've had a chance to look at your proposal. Any comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to the committee for entertaining this request. I'm here tonight with Julie Bartlett Nelson, who's the archivist, head of the museum. So I'll let her speak in a moment. But I just wanted to give the committee an update that we came to you in the spring for textile assessment, and this is another piece of that project, which is to get the Coolidge Presidential Library and Museum, as Brian said, the only one in a public library, renovated so that it brings it up to a modern day museum visitor standard and adds a lot more depth to the story, because it's a really interesting one, and it's a local one and a national one that we're proud to have at our public library. So Julie, I'll turn it over to you to talk just for a minute about the desk.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for entertaining this proposal. So as you saw, few pictures of the desk. So this piece right now has not been on display for a few years because it was in need of some repairs. And, due to just age and being out on display for a long time. And at this point, we are looking for the funding to hire Sharon Meerman, who's local, has a studio for woodworking in Florence, to do the stabilization and structural repairs and preservation that's needed for this particular piece. In the proposal, we had a photo of Coolidge actually sitting on this desk in 1899, which is really fun for our collection. And we've been working on design plans with design division to do a major renovation to the Coolidge Museum. And our exhibits committee and the designer loved this particular piece to really tell the story of Coolidge's very early local office and his rise out of Northampton onto the national scene, and using this particular piece to tell that story of his city council days from Ward 2 in Northampton and how his political career grew out of his Northampton local office. And so at this point, the desk we know came to Forbes Library in 1962 after a 1956 renovation, and the owner of the desk who had acquired it after it was removed from City Hall in a renovation. And she just bought it at an auction, and she donated that to Forbes in 1962 for display. And so it has been in the collection since then as well. And at this point, we just need repairs made to it to take it into the next century of history and display. The woodworker that we had interviewed and sort of chosen out of a few to do this piece, we didn't want it, we didn't want to full out make it look brand new. It is a historic piece, so we were really looking for somebody with historic preservation experience. She's worked with a lot of museums across New England, as well as a few national projects. And she's right here in Florence, and a woman-owned business. So I think that was important to us to have a local person do this work as well. So I don't know if there's any.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa and Julie about Coolidge's desk restoration project? Okay, so Martha, was that a hand?
Hi. Thank you, Julie and Lisa. This is such an exciting project. I had one question and then one comment. I noticed in Sharon's proposal that she's not going to be doing any finishing of the surface. And is that something that's not needed, or it's just not something you're choosing to do at this time? You said you didn't want it to look brand new, so maybe it was the answer to the question.
Oh, yep. So I think we weren't looking to have it sort of refinished and made look like it's brand new. And so that would just be a cleaning, restoration, and then sort of like a finish coat just to preserve it from fingerprints and dust and that sort of thing. So it wouldn't be sandblasted and refinished like you probably would for a regular piece maybe in your home, but that it would have a historic finish to it. Right now, we know the original piece was probably like a fake leather pad on it. That has been missing for decades, and there's just kind of almost like a piece of construction paper that was on the top of it. And so we will clean and restore that and then make sort of the new pad from pictures and what we think it looked like for that top piece as well.
Okay. And my other comment was, I hope that you still have the spittoon and that you can display it with a spittoon, because it's such a critical piece of cultural history.
Yeah, we don't have the spittoon. And so we've been talking with the designer about that, because in our sort of plans for the room too would also include a like a cabinet table. And there was a spittoon there in the White House cabinet room and the cabinet table. And we were like, both of these. And I was like, how are we going to do one of those as well? So, but yeah, it's kind of, when you look at the history of what that room used to look like, and including that somehow, whether we're going to point it out in a photo or whether we're going to, have a replica of that. But we've been discussing that as well, kind of the history of that room and space too.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Lisa or Julie?
Yeah, Brian.
Chris?
So a really interesting project. I wanted to ask Julie, you mentioned that you spoke with some other people about doing the work. Did you actually solicit any formal bids?
For that, we had people that came out and looked at it, and that we talked to, and in terms of submitting quotes, and we had two other people that did not actually submit a quote to us and just kind of said this wasn't it wasn't the right fit for their work. And so then we were looking at other woodworkers, and one who just wanted to do a total refinish of it, which wasn't the historic character we were looking for. And so we didn't have any other quotes submitted.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I will say we were pretty much looking for somebody that was, easy driving distance to transport this to a studio. So we didn't look too far out of sort of Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont. So
All right, anything else? Okay, is there someone want to make a motion regarding the Coolidge desk proposal?
I'll move that we fund the restoration of Calvin Coolidge's desk at a level of $3,000.
Thank you, Martha. Is there a second? Julia, with a second. Is there any further discussion on this proposal to fund 3,000 for Coolidge's desk? Sarah, take us through a roll call.
All right, so roll call vote on the Coolidge desk recommendation. Lemmy,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Chris Hellman,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Tate,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you.
All right, and
Thank
thank you,
you.
Lisa, and thank you, Julie. You're welcome to stick
Thank you.
around, but you do not have to.
Thank you for the good work you're doing, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Next up is the Mill River Flood Tree Memorial Project to the tune of $3,000. I know, Gabby, you're here representing Smith College, among other of the numerous hats that you wear. I don't know if you're joined by a colleague here or not.
I
But
am
if you-
joined by my fabulous Smith College students who are 3 together in the Zoom box.
Oh, nice. I was curious as to who those mystery 3 people were. Now we know. Gabby, you want to give us, again, we've had a chance to review the project and read the proposal. If you want to just give us a general overview, that is always helpful.
Sure. Hi, friends. Thanks so much for hearing us out on this. I hope that some of you had the opportunity to engage with our Mill River Flood Memorial, which most extensively went down in May of 2024, in the actual 150th anniversary. And just to refresh you all, that was a really multimedia, multifaceted commemoration of the flood. Included elements such as rereading of some historic documents, a kind of a reader's theater, memorial service up in Williamsburg. We worked hand in glove with the Historic Northampton, which put up 74 markers all along the course of the flood. There was a cascade of bells that we had the churches from Williamsburg down to Northampton ringing church bells at the time that the water would have been moving through their towns in the morning of May 16th, 1874. And then my part as one of the lead on the Mill River Greenway initiative was to initiate what I hope will be someday about 145 new trees to be planted in the footprint of the Mill River flood, each of which will be dedicated to either the flood victims or some of the flood heroes. So just to give you for instance, a gentleman named Collins Graves who rode a horse down the course of the river and saved many lives by warning folks to get up out of the way of the flood. So the intention with this project is both backward looking and forward looking. So we look backwards to commemorate the lives of those lost, many of whose names are long forgotten to the public, but not to the historians of the flood who know who all of them are. And then also at the same time to look forward and tell a story about climate resilience and flood planning, which is very much a current concern along the Mill River. And Sarah and I work together in many other projects that relate to climate mitigation and flood preparation. I live in Williamsburg myself, and Williamsburg and Northampton obviously are stakeholders in the Mill River flood watershed. So what we're asking you all to support is the identification, siting, and acquisition of 20 of what we hope will be 145 trees someday. And all of those trees, if we are able, all those trees, we will be sure to cite them according to the CPA criteria, on permanently preserved land, public property. I've already got one. We've already got one at Grovewood, Northampton. That's where the flood dropped its debris, and that was the final resting place for many of the flood's victims. So we'd be sure that these 20 particular trees conform to the guidelines of CPC, CPA funding. There's also a digital component. All these trees are represented on a story map. There's an opportunity to tell the stories of the flood victims. I guess the last thing I'll say, and then I just want to give my students just a quick moment, is at the time of the commemoration, we planted 4 trees. Last spring, we were able to plant another 5, so I'm up to 9. But I have a long way to go. So this would be a big help, and this is my perfect transition. I have an enormous resource in my students at Smith College who are eager to support and help with this project. And so if you guys are open, I'd love to just turn the microphone over to them for just a minute, just to give you a sense of the ways in which this project is offering a community-based learning opportunity for Smith College students.
Hi. Well,
Thank you,
actually,
Gabby.
oh. Hi. Well, actually, we can add that count to 10 now because we planted a tree on Monday, which is very exciting. But I'm Stella.
I'm Ellen. I'm Ava.
And some of the things that we're working on this semester with Gabby on this project are kind of coordinating and finding people to host these trees, citing locations that are meaningful, like in relation to the floodplain, and then, matching trees to the people that we're dedicating them to, having little events to plant them, and updating that online story map.
Yeah, this is definitely a continuation of stuff we started working on. I was one of the students who helped create the story map for the original flood commemoration. So it's really cool to see that we're able to, keep working with the community and see the involvement as we update the maps. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys want to tell the story, just the anecdote of the tree planted Monday and who it's dedicated to?
Yeah, so the tree we planted on Monday was dedicated to Mary Carter, and she was from Canada, and not much was kind of known about her, and we planted it with
Courtney. I'm not
Courtney.
sure what Courtney's last name
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, Courtney
she's
Morehouse. Yeah.
a community member who lives
Yeah.
in Williamsburg. Her property backs right up to the Mill River.
Yeah.
And so we all got together and we planted this tree with her, and we put the tag on it, and we wrote some words for Mary Carter, who's the victim of the flood. And we got to hear, why Courtney was interested in hosting this tree. And it was really special to hear someone who lives, right next to the river, about why she wants to be part of this project and how she feels about the river, the past floods, and the continuation of working on flood resiliency, because she lives so close and she's, hoping to make her community, safer and more resilient.
And these are some of the pluses of having these conversations, having these little tree planting events, is kind of actually having those in-person moments with community and building like a sense of familiarity around the river. Yeah.
Thank you, Ava, Ellen, Stella, and Gabby, questions for the four of these Smith College folks? Anybody? I have one quick question. Let me go.
Hi, yeah. I guess I'm just curious about like when you said there's like a host of the tree, like can you just say a little more about how you find those or like what the sort of ongoing community engagement of like these trees it sounds like there's like an ongoing thing here, like a stewardship or something. And so I'd be curious to hear how you choose those people and what those people will be continuing to do in the community around all of it.
Yeah, thank you. I actually appreciate that question, Lemmy. So, it's a wonderful kind of chicken and egg project. So I'll just give you two anecdotes. Last year, we worked with the Dunphy School in Williamsburg to do some Mill River flood commemorations with the third grade. And in the context of that, we planted 2 trees with those students at the Dunphy School, and they were dedicated to a mother and her 7-year-old son who died in the flood. And so the students had the opportunity to learn a little bit about those folks, and they wrote memories or wishes. The third graders, the 8-year-olds, and then we put those wishes in the planting hole with the tree. So that's an example of a site that arose out of working with a student with a group of students. And I will say that I think there's a great opportunity with this funding to connect, particularly with the Leeds Elementary School, which is right on the Mill River and works with the Mill River as a learning system. So I'd be excited to see if there were some Northampton opportunities in that way. And then another way that it happens is that, for example, Dennis Picard, who is a local community member who is interested in the history of the flood, wrote me a note and made a donation of $150 and said, I'd really love to plant a tree in memory of a particular individual, Carrie Bonney, who's somebody that her story was meaningful to him. So in that case, I have Dennis who wants to do it, and I have the funding, and I have the person, but we don't yet have the tree or the exact location because Dennis doesn't live in Leeds. And so we'll look at Carrie's story. Maybe where did she live? Maybe where was she working? We just planted a tree at Smith College, which is dedicated to a flood victim who was 18 years old. And the story there was we felt the Betty Sharp, the historian, suggested that we plant that tree for Eveline Sherwood because she was a young person who could have attended Smith College as an 18-year-old woman from the community. So anyway, thanks for that question, Lemmy. All of which is to say these are coming up very organically in relationship with community organizations, community projects. I was just at an Asami farm today and they donated 3 trees that they're left over from their season because they want to participate coming in from trees. So now I have some trees that need dedications and locations. So each of these kind of comes together at the intersection of all these different forces. So it'd be really wonderful to get community preservation in as a partner as we continue to advance the community's collective investment in both memory and also resilience planning for the future.
Fred, you have your hand up. If you could introduce yourself, tell us where you live before making your comment, please. Unmute yourself, Fred.
My name is Fred Zimlock. I live on Pomeroy Terrace, and I'm just curious, what kind of trees are you planting? Are they just any trees, or do you have specific trees that you're planting?
They really are any trees. I certainly have a bias towards native trees, and as I think about it, many of them have been native species that would occur naturally in the floodplain, but the 2 trees that we planted at Dunphy School were fruiting pears. They have a school garden there, and so we thought edible, an edible species would be appropriate in that context. So there's site specific. I teach botany and horticulture at Smith, so in terms of choosing the right tree for the right place, we have my own experience as well as the botanic garden expertise to back us up. If it's a site that might get a little bit of flooding sometimes, if it's close to the river. The tree we just planted at Courtney's house is a black tupelo, which is a species that'll tolerate wet feet in case the river's up high. So we're really choosing the trees to be specific to the right trees for the places they're going.
Thank you very much.
Other questions for Smith folk? Okay, is there a motion regarding the Mill River Flood Tree Memorial Project?
I'll move that we fund the Mill River Flood Memorial Project at the level requested of $3,000.
Thank you, Martha. Is there a second?
Second.
Julia's got that second. Any further discussion? Sarah, can you do your
Yeah.
thing?
Sure. Roll call vote on the Mill River Tree Project recommendation. Julia?
Yes.
Lemmy?
Yes.
Chris Hellman?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Chris Tate?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava, Ellen, Stella, and Gabby for joining us and for all the good work that you do in commemorating this major local historic event and also building climate resiliency while you're at it. All four of you are welcome to stay, or you can not, and we won't feel bad about that.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Much obliged. Thank you for your support.
Next up is the Terrace Trails and Montview Conservation Improvement Project. I don't know if anyone is here to speak about that. Luke, is that a yes?
Yes, I can speak about it. I've had my video off because I'm here with my daughter, Sophia, who is an avid user of the conservation area.
Nice.
And I'm here also with Howard Moore, and Fred, who are also members of the board of the Meadow City Conservation Coalition, who's like a local 501c3 who manages these two properties that are in the proposal.
Great. So Luke and Howard and Fred, we've had a chance to review the proposal, but if there's anything you would like to add to help us, please do so. Luke, you want to begin?
Yeah, sure. So the motivation, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity for this sort of small grant. I feel like when we saw this come up in the email, we thought it was a really good fit for us because we're a local community-based volunteer-run 501c3, not a huge budget, but this sort of opportunity is really meaningful for us in order to push these projects forward. And both of them are projects that we've been thinking about for a long time, but have sort of run into roadblocks getting some of the resources together. And so the overall theme here is improving the recreation and also the native habitat for two areas in Northampton, the Montview Conservation Area, which the area that we're talking about there is sort of a meadow habitat that we managed to stay in like early successional meadow. And then also Terrace Trails, which is one of the only like forested hiking areas on our side of Northampton. You know, behind Smith College, there's a really nice trail that goes along the river. But closer to, what's that? Okay, this is Sophia, everyone. Do you want to say hi? Okay.
Hi, Sophia.
I'm going to talk for a little bit, okay? And so a nice forested habitat. And, you know, last year we have a local neighborhood listserv of about 200 people that we sent an email to asking, like, what do you all want us to do as a local organization to improve these conservation areas? The number one response was to put on tree tags in the terrace trails. We have a really great volunteer system that maintains the trails, but all the trees are unmarked. And so we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to put up some permanent tree tags, identifying the trees. We already did a walk with a local arborist who identified the trees. We mapped them. I'm gonna need a minute, Sophie, okay? Yeah, I'll give you the pen. And so we have them temporarily marked, but we want to put on permanent tags so that people can know what they're looking at with a little bit of interpretive signage. And then along with that same thing, there's on the Map View Conservation Area, there's some trails going through the early successional habitat. And one of the criticisms that we sometimes get about that place is that it looks kind of like unmanaged because it's an early successional habitat where it's mowed and brush hogged every 1 to 2 to 3 years, depending on the part of the habitat. So it's just regrowth. And that, that's really important for species and stuff. But also we've been thinking that it would be helpful to have some sort of signal to people in that place that, this is a managed habitat and there are people who care and steward for this land. And we're thinking that a pollinator garden, like a 80 square foot or so in sort of a central location in the trail system, would signal to people who are walking through here, like, oh, this isn't like an abandoned field. This is an area that's being managed for these purposes. And we would have signage that sort of explains our rationale for the management. So we already have the space picked out. We have it prepped and sort of mulched right now for weed suppression, and we'd plant it all out in the spring is the plan. And so I don't know if Howard or Fred, you have anything else to add related to this?
I think you said it all.
Howard? Unmute yourself. Howard, unmute yourself first.
Yeah.
There we
So
go.
I would add that I think these areas are, if you're not familiar with them, I think you'd find they're surprisingly well used. That the terrace trails behind the Cutchins programs has the city put in crushed rock for one of the loops of those trails so that it's a wheelchair and walker accessible walking path through the woods. And the one over at Montview is, I think, pretty well used also in terms of its grass, so it's not as accessible, but it's a lot of times if you just go by, you'll see people in there walking, and so I think this is a real. In other words, these won't be signs that will be hidden from view. They'll actually be in places that people use.
Great, thank you, Luke, Howard, and Fred. Any questions from committee members to folks about the Terrace Trails and Montview Conservation Improvement Project? Okay, was that a hand, Julia, or a scritch? A scritch, got it. Is there a motion about this project? This is where someone generally has to speak. Is there a motion?
I can do that again.
Thank you, Martha.
So I will move that we fulfill the request of the applicant for the project at Meadow City Conservation for $1,964.75.
Great, thank you, Martha. Second, Julia with her second. Any further discussion? Sarah?
All right, so if there's no additional discussion, roll call vote on recommendation of this project. Go the opposite way. Brian?
Yes.
Chris Tate?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Chris Hellman?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
And Lemmy?
Yes.
All right, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, Fred, Howard, Luke, and Sophia, was it?
Say thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you for your good work and in your volunteer efforts, and look forward to seeing more of it. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, or you can certainly not. All right, so we have approved 3 grants: Coolidge Desk, the Mill River Flood, and the Montview Conservation. Next week we will have Sarah, are we going to have all projects being presented in one meeting, or are we doing that in 2 meetings?
That's one thing I was gonna bring up. It seemed to make sense because there's not that many of them this time, just to do them all in one meeting, if everyone agrees.
So we would have the presentations by the groups and be able to sit through it. Five, is it 4 or 5? 5, right? Yes, 5. Are we good with that? Hearing all of those groups in one evening? I'm seeing yes. Everybody's good? Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. So you will coordinate that for us next Wednesday night. Before we break, though, um, uh, we have been asked, as we are always asked on an annual basis, to fund the Community Preservation Coalition. Their dues request this year, as it more or less is, I think every year, $4,350. I can't quite remember where they get that figure. It's just as all of us, I think, recall, we've had numerous discussions about this in the past about to fund or not to fund. Um, and while we appreciate the good work that they do for a number of different organizations, uh, we have still debated among ourselves whether or not to fund or partially fund or not fund at all that coalition dues request. So they've come up to us again. I think we're a few months down the road, right? Didn't they come the end of the summer, was it? And we put off discussion until this first meeting. Um, is there any folks feel any particular way about this? Any comments that people want to make about funding the Community Preservation Coalition? Martha?
I had a question. I know when we talked about this, I think the last couple of years, we were suggesting to them that they institute or at least consider the idea of instituting more of a sliding scale. You remember there's tiers, and like we were on the same tier as Boston. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. Like our budget was, a fraction of some of these larger communities, and we're still paying the same amount. I just wonder if that had been considered by them at all.
And we did communicate that. I don't know if it was considered by the organization. Let me just see if I can pull up the dues schedule, because it's based on I think the total revenue of the community. Yeah, and I remember, Martha, you had brought up a possible change that they could implement, because if you're looking at, there's basically, I think, a 4-tier structure. I'm not able to find it on their website, but the people on the communities on the lowest tier were paying a much greater overall percentage than the people on the sort of the higher tier. So we did suggest some ways that they could potentially look at that, but we didn't hear back about that. Let's see.
Is that, Martha, would you like to suggest we resubmit that request?
I think we should just keep hammering away at it. I just don't think it's right. I think, I don't know, without looking at the figures, I just remember last year or the year before, years past, it just seemed really, there was a big disparity. I don't know. I think maybe even asked Stuart how they developed it, didn't we? When he came to talk with us and really have a response. Chris, maybe you remember more of this.
Well,
I
I
don't.
recollect that there are tiers and that we were on the high end of one of the tiers. So we were paying maybe less than others might be because our revenue was on the upper end of one of the tiers. We were below the cutoff for the next tier. So we were actually getting a fairly better deal. But if your objection is that other communities pay more, then that's certainly true. Relatively speaking.
Chris Hellman?
I'm gonna let you, Martha and Chris, if you're still working on that before I raise a slightly different issue. Are you good? I can't hear you, Martha.
Martha, unmute.
Sorry about that. Chris, Tate, I'll trust you on that because I don't remember exactly what where we fell with it, but it just seems like an inequitable kind of situation, so.
Sarah, is that a question, concern you could resubmit to Stuart Saganor at the coalition?
Yeah, I certainly could. And I'm trying to find both on their website, the dues structure that outlined what it would be per community based on local revenue, but I'm not able to put my hands on that immediately. And then our correspondence about dues. Let's see. Yeah,
Perhaps
so
while
we basically communicated that the CPC would like to point out that there appear to be some inequities built into the dues fee scale where smaller communities pay a much larger percentage of their overall budgets than do larger communities. And this could be recalibrated annually to result in the same amount of revenue for the coalition, while also making the scale more equitable as larger municipalities continue to adopt the CPA. Like now it's on a pretty rigid scale that's been the same for a few years, as Martha had pointed out.
Martha, Martha, is that something you would suggest that we resubmit to them?
Yeah, I don't see why not. It may result in an adjustment for us. Maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say without doing the math, but I think it's something they should consider. I mean, I don't know that we're the community to drive this, but I don't think it hurts. So.
Sarah, is that something you could resubmit on our behalf?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Good. Thank you. Chris Hellman, another issue?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I continue to be concerned about the fact that I think that some of the coalition's agenda doesn't reflect what would benefit the taxpayers in Northampton. But I do think that if their only function was to provide information about efforts on Beacon Hill to either reduce the state's contribution or roll back the program in its entirety, then we're probably adequately served. We're getting value for money on that, but so I'll go along with it.
Any other comments about the dues request?
Yeah, I had a question about was this the thing we sent like a partial check for, or was that something else? I'm like remembering a conversation at some point and that there was a partial check, and I guess I'm curious if we sent that request along with the partial check, and if we were gonna send the request again, maybe we withhold and then pay some, you know what I mean? Like it would be interesting, like I guess we could like wait to hear back before we commit one way or another, just that they're like hearing our like part of paying dues to something is that they hear our concerns and respond to concerns, and if we just don't know, then we could sort of refrain from paying dues until we hear about if they've like really weighed this issue that we're weighing. It was just like a process thought, but in terms of actually paying it, yeah, it seems like a pretty steep number for like what the agenda of the coalition presented.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So back in 2018, the commission provided a partial payment of $1,000, basically saying that CPA funds are invaluable resources to our community. Every dollar is vitally important. So, providing this extra money to the coalition will take away from the good work that the CPA will be able to do on the ground in Northampton. But they consider it either an all or nothing perspective. So either you pay the dues and you are a member of the Community Preservation Coalition, or you're not. So they accepted the $1,000, but Northampton wasn't considered a dues paying member at that point.
Right. It was quite a brouhaha, right? There was a lot of back and forth about that. So let me do remember correctly that had been something that happened in the past. Are you suggesting, Lemmy, we go that route again?
Yeah, I think we'd consider it. I mean, and maybe we consider what Martha's like. Yeah, I would like to consider that, I guess, but I don't know if that just makes it more complicated, but and like what the advantages of our like if the point because of the way they explain most of what they do, like is about expanding the CPA to other communities, like obviously want to support that, but yeah, like is being a member beneficial or just contributing to their cause? Like if being a member is equated to just contributing to their cause, I don't know. And I can't remember all the benefits of being a member exactly, but yeah, it's just a really high number. Like thinking about all these like small grants we just did, like the thing like we could like fund multiple small grants with that. And then small grants are something I particularly care about as like from the community engagement standpoint. Like that's like we could fund so many young people's ideas, projects. Like there's just so many things that could be done with $4,000. That could go like a long way for just small pockets of our community or larger pockets of our community.
So we fit in the 1 million to 2.25 million category. There's our 4,350.
Yeah, this was my recollection. We come in pretty good as far as the tiers go. So if we were another, 250,000, we'd be paying double.
Just about, yeah. Great, thank you for pulling that
As far
up.
as Northampton as a community, great. If we're worried about the inequity for all communities across the state of Massachusetts and we want to write a letter about that, then I think we could do that. I personally feel like we tried the partial fee once, and then Stuart came and kind of re-educated us, and then we all decided as a committee that was very similar to the makeup that we have currently that we would pay the full thing last year. So I don't know if we want to like re-legislate this again every year when this fee comes up. Last year we decided to pay it. I think this year we should either decide to pay it or not pay it. I don't think the partial payment worked out for us last time.
Julia, any comments?
I have to agree with what Chris just said about pay it or don't pay it. And I'm very taken by your thinking on it, Lemmy. I mean, yeah, 4,350, that's about 2 small projects. And the small projects we heard tonight were all compelling and all leveraged community and volunteerism in a way that I think is super important to this committee. Possibly, I'm leaning toward more important than giving some money to this group.
Any other discussion on this?
Sarah, does the fee come out of that administrative line?
It does.
Our dues. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that as I recall, you're looking at the 25 million and above. I don't know how many cities there are that would be a city. I'm assuming Boston. I don't know if there are others, but I think that was where it just feels like, they're so much wealthier and they only have to pay this. They pay 4 times what we make, but we pay, but they're, they have many more dollars than we do. So anyway, yeah.
And conversely, some of the smallest communities with the least amount of revenue, although their dues amount is quite small, the percentage of the total revenue that is much larger than others.
Any other questions or comments about?
About whether do they offer anything to like potential applicants in communities that exist? Like, are there any sort of resources that would like help come provide education about CPC in general and help people, like if it like provided our community with like support? I know, Sarah, you probably do a bunch of that too, but I'm just curious about the sort of education or advocacy efforts for like citizens as much as it is for lawmakers or communities that are trying to do it.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest benefit that they have is the existence of their website, which coalesces a lot of information about the Community Preservation Act all in one place. So that you can see like, well, how have communities used housing funds in the past? Like, and not just in straight like Excel tables about it, but what are some stories about that and how does that work? There is a database of older technical assistance articles that may be useful to potential applicants. Like, I don't know the extent to what extent applicants may be going to the Community Preservation Coalition website versus the City of Northampton website, for example. But there absolutely is value in having all of that in a central place that people can look for. Like if you Google Community Preservation Act in Massachusetts, this will be the first place that, or it should be hopefully the first place that you'll get sent. And there is a lot of information there.
My understanding is that the coalition itself can be incredibly useful to communities that don't have a SARA serving them, and that those communities that can be clueless as to the nuances of the act really do turn to the coalition for that sort of support and edification and all this stuff. And I would imagine they serve those communities well. We have Sarah, and when we have questions, when I have questions, I go to this committee, or to Sarah. I don't go to the coalition, and that's not to denigrate the coalition. It's just that we are so fortunate to have such an active and knowledgeable staff person with Sarah to answer that. And I guess I don't mind if that's the case. If I'm correct in that, then I don't mind my money going to helping out these smaller towns. I'm sure Boston must have what, Sarah, 3 or 4 of you, I would think. I can't imagine that they don't, right? But well, maybe not. But no one could. It's 3 or 4 of Boston people make one of Sarah, only one of you. In any event, further discussion on this, or is someone ready to make a proposal out of this?
I would just say that my recollection from our education was that the coalition lobbies on behalf of community preservation across the state, which is always in danger of being repealed at the state level. At least that's what Stuart would have us believe. So, if it's a trade-off between $4,000 and not having CPA funds to do any projects, the $4,000 doesn't sound so bad.
Any other comments? Okay, can someone make a motion? We are a quiet bunch tonight in terms of motion making. Somebody would like to make a motion regarding coalition dues?
I move to follow the precedent that we set last year and approve the dues.
To fully funded Chris Tate at $4,350?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Anybody seconding that fully funding?
Sure, I'm not going to leave Chris hanging.
Okay, we'll take that as a second. Thank you, Chris. Further discussion?
I just want to, so are we going to say, if we do approve this, do vote to pay the dues, are we going to communicate with them about asking them to think a little more critically about their fee schedule?
I think that can be a friendly amendment to the motion. Chris Tate, is that correct?
Yeah, if that needs to be a motion, sure. I don't even know if we need to motion for Sarah to do that or not, but I think it's worth sending them, asking them about that.
a request or suggestion or concern about a more equitable distribution formula. Okay, so there's been a motion by Chris Tate, a second by Chris Hellman. Martha's heading on that Sarah's sending out that wording. Any other discussion on this, Julia?
I mean, I'm really torn on this one, and I certainly understand what this group does, and I'm wondering if we need to communicate our concern about the due structure beyond, I forget his name, the executive director. So doesn't he work with a panel of members who represent CPC committees from across the state? I think there's like every so often he puts out a call saying, would somebody like to join it? And I feel like we need to communicate with that group as well. They're us in other towns. And it's we have this conversation all by ourselves in Northampton. I'm kind of curious, how do the folks in East Hampton feel, or Amherst, or somewhere else? And are these conversations happening there? And why aren't we all engaged in the conversation as opposed to just Northampton engaged in the conversation? Or maybe we are, and we don't even know it. Except in Boston, where they've got 6 Sarahs and $6 million,
So
So,
there is this Community Preservation Coalition Steering Committee.
Yeah, that's the group.
But this is an organization that's separate from any state group. So
right.
So I'm not quite sure to whom that may be communicated. I'm trying to find that.
It's a nonprofit. It's got to have bylaws. It's got to have more than, unless he's his own boss all the time. I am my, which is kind of interesting, right? Like a nonprofit where the executive director reports to nobody, is their own boss. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to expand this conversation beyond our cells of Zoom, and not to, I like the idea of amending the motion to say, let's have a conversation about the dues, but my gosh, we've done that. So let's do it again. And we can do that every year.
So it seems like really the only other group advocating on the CPA's behalf is this Community Preservation Coalition Steering Committee. Is that right? There's a coalition itself and there's a steering committee. Can we send this request for more equitable formula to both of those? Sarah, you're looking confused.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out to whom I would mail such a thing, because I think it's just the same address as the coalition. But there is a list of the members on the steering committee on the coalition's website. So there's
with emails that we could send to them.
I could find them, or at least find 1 or 2 of them.
Julia, how does that sound? Better?
Yeah, I just want I want to be sure that this isn't always, a conversation where we say something and he said, I heard you, thank you. And then next year we maybe approve the money and we say it again and he goes, thank you. That there's more people involved in the conversation.
Great. That's a very well thought out point. Any other discussion? So Sarah, you can figure this out, how to send these.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I can definitely find out the contact information of.
Great, and send a letter out on our behalf. Any other comments regarding the dues request? So Chris Tate made the proposal to fully fund it 4,350. Chris Hellman seconded. We have these not really amendments, friendly amendments, but that Sarah's going to contact both the Community Preservation Coalition as well as the Coalition Steering Committee with our concerns and our suggestions as to more equitable funding formula. Any other comments? Okay, Sarah, roll call.
Great. Roll call on the dues payment. Chris Hellman,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Lemmy,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Chris Tate,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes,
Unanimous. Thank you.
I suppose it's not appropriate for the minutes to note that there was some eye rolling and no one smiled during their yeses on that, but that's the way it goes. All right, it's 8:22. We're not doing too bad here. Other business not foreseen when the agenda was published.
So we don't necessarily need to decide this at this meeting because we do have some time before the deliberations begin. But thinking about site visits before maybe it gets too cold to do some of them might be useful. So next week we'll be meeting with all of the applicants, and then after that we'll be doing the public session and then thinking about the recommendations. So someplace in there over the next few weeks, if a site visit to any of these full grant possibilities would be useful, I could set that up. So maybe just a placeholder to think about it for next week, and then we can set that up.
Sure. It seems to me perhaps the most appropriate one would be the for you, if it would be possible to take able-bodied folks out through the conservation land off of 66.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm not sure anything else really lends itself, right?
Well, I'd
Crafts-
encourage people to just take a drive by and take a look at the current status of the park where the pump track's being proposed, veterans. It's really worth looking at what that's become. It was a jewel when we were excited and put in a skateboard park, and it is no longer a jewel of a park. So it's just do a drive by.
Great, thank you, Julia. I do want to point out that on our review schedule, Sarah's asking that questions regarding the 5 larger projects be submitted to her by tomorrow. Is that right? Yes, October 9th. Is it the 8th today? Yes. So maybe you'll give us to the end of the week.
Yeah, that's fine. And that was based on the schedule when I had the erroneous meeting last week. So, it's fine if you get them to me by Tuesday.
Yeah, if we get those out to her as soon as possible. Great. So, and again, reminder, given that we push this meeting up or back, whatever it is, a week, we'll be meeting next Wednesday, the 15th, and that's when hopefully all 5 applicants will be able to present proposals to us. Any other business not foreseen when the agenda was published?
I have a general question for Sarah, which I probably should have asked earlier. Sarah, do we know what the timeline is on the I don't know what to call it, the hydraulic evaluation at Mains Field is? Because I'd love to know when that report comes out and take a look at it.
Yeah, so draft findings are out now. I know Fuss and O'Neill is working on finalizing those into a better report format, but they do have the analysis of the H&H study, and they took a cool drone up. It was really neat. So they did a drone and an elevation survey, and they do have that ready, but they're working on the final report that's a little bit more digestible format. And then rec department will be working on setting up the few days.
We had Chris, we had an oral report at the commission meeting this past week. And it's pretty unbelievable what they're learning and what they're finding, and the way that they're looking at the different models of the river, and how what they're learning is probably also going to be shared. I mean, Sarah, you've seen some of it, so it's been shared with you folks, but also shared with DPW so that they can take a look at Willow Street. I didn't even realize how Willow Street was impacted, and Riverside Drive as well. So I think, I know we had a lot of conversation about funding the Mains Field piece, but I think the city's going to learn an awful lot when all this data comes in, and we start looking at at flood potential and how we can handle what used to be 100-year events. I mean, we learned this, like what used to be 100-year events are now 10-year events. Like,
yeah, I mean, the bottom line is it's going to flood, and it's going to flood a lot. And now we have a lot of data to support that analysis. So can we figure out where the new velocity zones are, and how can we develop a park that will continue to work with that?
And
So
That's
they
really
are,
sort of,
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry,
Chris.
Martha, you go.
So they are sort of outlining some parameters about what's possible down the road. Great, perfect. So we'll, yeah, I won't ask any more questions. I'll look at the
I
report.
mean, the first part of the charrette will be like, here's where we were, here's what happened, here's where we're at, here's where we want to move forward. Here's
Great.
how we want the community to provide input on that. I mean, it's just a reality that it's going to continue to flood.
Right.
I mean, that's just unfortunately inescapable. So the rec department really wants the community's involvement on, what is critical, what can we be flexible on, what can't we be flexible on, and how can we work not only with Mainsfield, but with the rest of the rec facilities that are available.
Mhm.
And Sarah, people are able to take a look at this report before the charrettes happen? Is that correct?
They should be. Julia, do you know if there will be a formal report for people to digest, or at least some, yeah.
There'll be some summary content for the public to digest, and then we'll all see the full report. And that will come. It could come as soon as our next rec commission meeting. They were redoing some of the modeling. It was so interesting. I was like, wow.
And how will people access that report?
In the past, when we've had reports like that, they've been up on the Parks and Rec Department website.
On the Parks and Rec website, great.
Yeah.
Chris Hellman, you had something else you wanted to say, is that right?
well, actually, Julia touched on where my concern was really coming from, is that while this is being focused on the future of Maine's Field, I had a tangential conversation that was more of a DPW chat about Riverside Drive, and so I'm interested in finding out more about that. I'm concerned that there's any possibility whatsoever that the final report will not be available before the public gathering is going to occur. I would not have funded it under that circumstance under any condition.
The public piece won't happen until the final report's final, until we really get that, and they are close.
Thank you for your work on that, Julia. Any other business having to do with Mansfield or anything else? Okay, so once again, we will welcome a new member next week when Paul Foster Moore, who is a current active member of the Conservation Commission, joins us. And we will see you all next week. Sarah, as always, thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.
All right,
Thanks.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
See you next week.